Welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. It's me, Niall, delighted as always to be joined by Danny, and we're here with an interesting topic of conversation today. We're going to address the speculation that's been kind of in the media over the past 24 hours or so that the multi-weight world champion, the controversial Gervonta Tank Davis, is stepping away from boxing. Yeah, reported by a number of different sites. Still waiting for a word from the horse's mouth himself, but yeah, of course, a lot of outside the ring controversy and the Lamont Roach fight, the rematch not officially signed yet, but it looks of it not officially confirmed for August. So yeah, we're going to be discussing what we think of these rumors and yeah, what Tank's legacy will be if he does. What legacy would he leave behind, Danny? If he does call it a day. But yeah, first of all, let's jump into this speculation. And we have to say it is no more than really speculation at the minute. Nothing confirmed from Tank himself, but it is being reported on a number of different platforms that he is stepping away. What's your thoughts on this? Yeah, what's your general opinion? Are you surprised? And do you think it's true? Do you think we will ever see him fight again?
Yeah, I would 100% believe it. When I first saw the tweet, I think it was from Rick Glazer, who's got a hit and miss record with news and is a man certainly with his own agendas. So, of course, as you say, we're not taking this as absolute gospel. But when I saw that, of course, you're a bit like, oh, right. But if it was to come out and Tank himself was to confirm it, I wouldn't be surprised at all. The start of this year, in the build up to the Lamont Roach fight, he was talking about wanting to get therapy to work on himself. But he was saying, "Oh, I have to wait until I retire to do that because that takes away the eye of the tiger as a boxer." So that's a red flag. He's talked consistently throughout his career, talking about making as much money as he can and then dipping. He's certainly made enough money to, live a good few lifetimes, and he's never really shown much of an appetite for taking legacy defining fights, which is maybe what we'll come on to in a bit. So I'm not particularly surprised. He's not a fighter of the ilk of Canelo, who I've been critical of in the past for certain things, but one thing you can say about Canelo is he's not just been in the sport to make money and dip. He's made five times the money of Gervonta Davis and is still keen on securing big fights and legacy defining fights. Maybe not to the extent he was early in his career, but to answer your question, no, if this is to be confirmed by Gervonta Davis, I'll not be shocked at all.
Yeah, I totally agree. We were just kind of chatting off camera there briefly about it as well, and I don't think it will come as a surprise. I think he hit the nail on the head, although he's not come out so far and kind of confirmed it. He has dropped these little carrots in the past of saying that he's maybe mentally checked out, or as you said, he's looking to make the most money as possible. Yeah, the Lamont Road fight is, signs there that he was mentally checked out in that one. There was times in that fight that he looked like he didn't really want to be there. And I think he kind of, yeah, he might have dropped hints after that as well. And of course, it's up in the air about this whole kind of court date for his latest kind of misdemeanor and yeah, outside of the ring controversy, it just plagues his whole career, which is such a shame to see. But yeah, it wouldn't be a surprise to me whatsoever. As you say, he has made plenty of money. And from where he's from in America, he's from one of the most kind of impoverished areas of America, and you can't begrudge him for wanting to make the most money as possible from where he came from, and he's done incredibly well in that regard. But you'd worry as well. As I say, he is plagued with these kind of issues outside the ring, and without that kind of routine of boxing, he's one of those that you'd worry would completely fly off the handle. He has done so already, obviously at times. He's flown off the handle a few times, but without that kind of discipline of boxing, you'd really, really fear for Gervonta Davis if he was to call it a day at this age. But yeah, he's made plenty of money. He's won world titles, I suppose. Now that's kind of what we're going to discuss next. He has won world titles in multiple weight divisions. You said it yourself there. He's not looked to really crack these big legacy defining fights, but he has picked up multiple world titles. If Gervonta Davis was to come out over the next day or so and say, right, that's it, I'm done. What is the legacy that he's leaving imprinted on boxing? What is Tank's legacy for you?
It's a difficult question, really. I mean, you've described him as a multi-weight world champion, which is what he's sort of billed as, but he's not really. There's regular titles sprinkled in there, interim titles sprinkled in there, and I think that's a bit of a discredit to like legitimate multi-weight world champions. And in terms of his legacy, it's a difficult one because that's almost subjective. He was a big star in the sport. He's brought big nights. The Ryan Garcia fight was huge, of course. But for me, the best win on his record is still Jose Pedraza. That first world title win. Jose Pedraza was a world class fighter back then. And for me, he's not done anything to top that. I think I've got no issue with fighters chasing the biggest money fights, but I think he was happy to chase fights that weren't as big money, but that he knew he'd win, so that the money would just be a sort of steady sort of flow. And yeah, it's annoying because I don't know. I guess we feel entitled as fans sometime to these matchups, and we're not going to get him versus Shakur now. I'd be confident of that, even if Gervonta Davis wasn't to retire. Um, he's got very loyal fans from certain parts of the world and certain demographics, and I can see an almost sort of split in terms of how people remember him. I think the people who say, "Oh, he was this absolute killer. Look at his knockout record, never defeated. He would have knocked out Roberto Duran, this, that, and the other." Like the sort of delusion you hear from uh, fans who are diehard fans and fanboys, you would call them, of certain fighters. But in my opinion, you used the right word earlier on in the video, just a shame and a waste because he's an incredibly talented fighter. One of the one punch hardest punchers like the lower weights will have seen, certainly since I've been following boxing in and around lightweight. That left hand was a fight ender. We saw that time and time again. And who's to say if those big fight happened that he wouldn't have won them and wouldn't have, cemented a legacy that would go down with some of the greats in and around those weight classes. But for me, he's a million miles off. Um, Obviously, a very talented fighter will probably make it into the Hall of Fame based on obviously he achieved a lot in the sport compared to the vast majority of fighters. And as I say, Brock Big Knights was a big star. American too, doesn't hurt your chances. So he will end up a Hall of Famer. But for me, I'll be left wanting a lot.
Yeah, again, spot on. You hit the nail on the head there. I think, the biggest thing, he'll end up as one of the biggest kind of what if fighters, of this generation. Multi-weight world champion. But yeah, as you say, he was looking to, he cleverly manipulate his way to these titles by fighting, you know, the less risk, highest kind of, a lot of reward fighters, which is such a shame because as you said as well, he didn't he was good enough to mix it with these people. He is a talented fighter. He's got a lot of um detractors and he has a lot to pick at, but in terms of his in-ring ability, he's huge talent, huge power, and he has the personality. So yeah, it's a weird one. It's one of those that if you're in Gervonta Davis, is kind of if you're in the business mind frame, you want kind of less risk, highest reward. But for us fans, it's just so frustrating, and especially as you say, because it's not like he's kind of a talented fighter in a poor era. He's in an era with superstars. He's in an era with potential star fights like Shakur Stevenson, Teofimo Lopez, names like this, Devin Haney. When he was around 140. So it's just such a shame. It really is. Yeah, so and not to mention as well the constant rehydration clauses and these clauses with fighters and contracts. We've seen it with the Ryan Garcia fight. Yeah, as you say, I think Pedraza is probably still his best win, to be quite honest with you, all things considered. And remember for a long, long time people saying what that fight was in 2017, and he just went for so long with people saying, "What have you done for me lately?" But yeah, it's such a shame, a massive what if. Yeah, so just before we kind of wrap up, you kind of briefly touched on it there, and I mentioned it myself. How do you think? I don't think these fights will happen now either if he ever fights again. But how do you think fights with the likes of Shakur Stevenson and a Devin Haney would have played out? Teofimo, prime for prime.
A difficult one because if those fights were to happen now, I'd probably have a different opinion. But if you're saying if it was a couple of years ago with a relatively motivated Gervonta Davis, I think the Shakur one's a tough style for him. I think if it was at lightweight, he would have stopped Devin Haney, the version that fought Frank Martin, which wasn't even that long ago. It was not that long ago. He was looking amazing on the front foot. Uh, High volume had sort of moved away from the back foot counter puncher. I think that version of Gervonta Davis would have stopped Devin Haney. The Teofimo Lopez one's a really interesting one because we've only saw Teo sort of wasn't even really hurt against George Kambosos, was dropped, was caught flush. It showed a pretty good chin, although has never been in with a puncher, the likes of Gervonta Davis. So yeah, it's a difficult one. Teo maybe the more athletically gifted. Gervonta Davis perhaps the edge in technique and power. It's a tough one to call that. And then as I say, Shakur, I think, we've saw Tank struggles against fighters who can sort of take the range away from him and make him come to them. I mean, he did struggle a lot with Mario Barrios, which is form that hasn't aged well. Obviously, Lamont Roach, a lot of people thought beat him. Shakur Stevenson got better feet, better defense, better everything, bar power probably than Lamont Roach, so would probably make Shakur a favourite. But as I say, even if these reports turn out to be false, and some of those fights do happen, which I wouldn't have much confidence in, I'd be struggling to find myself picking Gervonta Davis against them because retirement or not, there's clearly an issue with the hunger and motivation. And people have been critical of all the fighters you've asked me about there, but the one thing is for sure they've all shown an appetite to fight meaningful fights. Devin Haney, Teofimo Lopez, Shakur Stevens, and all of them they're interested in cementing an actual legacy amongst boxing fans, which Gervonta Davis clearly isn't. So I would have to factor that into my thinking.
Yeah, very well put. It's a much different opinion pre and post Lamont Road fight. It really is. Post Lamont Roach, this version, you almost said it yourself. It's very hard to pick Gervonta Davis, but yeah, prime for prime. There's phenomenal fights there that unfortunately we it looks like we won't get. You have the
And sorry
likes
to
of
interrupt you. I think the fact that there's like reportedly been fairly meaningful and serious conversations about Gervonta Davis fighting Jake Paul says it all.
yeah, yeah, that's for a whole nother video. We could go on for hours about that, but yeah, just I found it so funny on Jake Paul calling out Anthony Joshua and then in the same breath calling out Gervonta Davis. But yeah, I could probably see that happening, to be quite honest with you. Unfortunately, but who do you root for on that one? That's the question. But yeah, just yeah, we've spoke a lot, but just before we kind of wrap up, there is a fight that I do want to ask you about because I don't know if you've seen it, the Tim Bradley quote from the last 24 hours talking about a potential if he was to fight Manny Pacquiao and he'd favour Manny Pacquiao to beat Tank now. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, I don't know because like Pacquiao definitely outperformed my expectations against Mario Barrios, but Barrios was really poor and almost did look like he was carrying him at times. Certainly showed too much respect for him. I can't imagine Gervonta Davis would approach it the same way. Even if he has lost a step, lost a bit of hunger, like if he turns up in shape and makes the weight and tries to knock Manny Pacquiao out, I think he would. I think the speed of Tank, the power, Barrios never a noted puncher, never really landed anything flush with any meat behind it on Pacquiao. Pacquiao been knocked out quite a few times, long time ago. That would be really sad, to be honest, if that fight happened and it unfolded the way I think it would. I really don't want that to happen. I'd rather he goes up to 185, which I'm sure he could be at after 6 months or a year's retirement and fights Jake Paul.
Yeah, I know it's although Tank would be coming up, and I think Pacquiao said the only way to take it is 145 or 147. But yeah, I think that was a bit crazy by Tim Bradley. Even as great as Pacquiao, as much as Pacquiao overperformed, I think if Tank Davis has any sort of hunger for that fight, it could be brutal, to be quite honest with you. So
Yeah, I
yeah, I
agree.
wouldn't want to see that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Whatever the future of Gervonta Tank Davis might be, but that was just myself and Danny discussing the speculation, the growing speculation that he's going to walk away from the sport. A multi-weight world champion, of course, but as we discussed, we think it's a big case of what if and what could have been. But it might not be the end, it might be. Let us know what you think in the comments below. What do you think of Tank's career if that is it? how do you got on against these names? And yeah, get involved in the comment section. Let us know what you think. And as always, don't forget, drop a like on the video, subscribe to our YouTube channel at ESBR Boxing if you're not doing so already, and follow us on all social media. It was a pleasure, Danny, and take care.
Cheers, mate. Thanks, folks.